Serbian football show. This is your host Milos speaking. Welcome to another week in the world of the crazy Serbian football. It's great to have you guys back with us today. As always, I'm joined by my good friends. Today we have Luca joining us. Luca, where are you this week in the world?
Hey, my friend. This week I'm in Charlotte. It's getting Charlotte, North Carolina. It's getting a little cold, and I just don't like it, dude.
Charlotte, yeah, it's a little north for you at this time of year.
Yeah, for sure, man.
And of course, we have our man from down under, Valley. Valley, how are you doing today?
Oh, did we actually finish last week's podcast? I've been talking ever since, and I just didn't realize that you three weren't there. Hey, yeah, because I'm there. All right, let's keep going. Nice to hear from all three of you.
There you go. And Alex, how's it going in Belgrade today, my man?
Going pretty good. It's been a bit of still a crazy week after everything went on in Portugal, and it still hasn't come down. And I've been enjoying the fact that Portugal is going to miss the World Cup basically because of the playoff draw. So it's just a happy day, man.
Oh, beautiful. Yes. We had a very historic show last week talking about Serbia's historic win in Lisbon and qualifying for the World Cup. And this week we have another historic accomplishment to talk about because last week one of our beloved clubs, Partizan, gave Estonian football their first ever victory in Europe. So let's all give a round of applause for Fuku Partizan. Absolutely masterful stuff they accomplished there for Estonian football. Alex, I know you're a big Partizan fan. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this great achievement and the upward swing of Estonian football currently.
I don't know what we ever did to that country, but those guys really do not like us. It's the tradition established in 2010, and it hasn't gone away. I actually was sleeping just before the game because it was a kickoff at 4:30, and I woke up just like after the game started. And after what I saw, I wish I would have stayed in bed. I wish I would have kept sleeping. Just a terrible day, all in all, and then not just because of the game, because of other stuff, but the game itself was just a wonderful cherry on top of the crab cake I got. It is the second worst embarrassment that I can recall Partizan has ever managed to pull off, at least in European terms, Shamrock obviously being the first one. And the only reason this is not worse than Shamrock is because, at least we're not eliminated because of it. And I can give them a little bit more credit to Estonia in the sense that they are a country that's got, a team that's played together for a long time, and, they've got a nice pitch and all that stuff and yada, yada, yada. But it's Flora Talent. With our reserve team, we should have absolutely beaten them. And it was boring. It was slow. It was evident that everyone on the team looked completely exhausted. And it seemed like they just didn't care and didn't bother to turn up. And unfortunately, we've seen these games already this year. We saw the game against Kent at home, although it was nowhere near as bad, and the opponent was much better. But just a complete lack of depth in this team has been evident. And the fact that they came with this approach of rotating guys and not coming out with a starting lineup is insulting in many ways. First of all, it's insulting to your opponent because one of the basic rules of football is that you cannot disrespect your opponent under any circumstances. It's beyond moronic in a moment when it's obvious that the financial situation in the club is a complete disaster. I mean, when is it not? But especially now and after the other things we've heard about how money's leaving from the football club to go to the water polo section and the cycling section and all that. I mean, they're stringing together like tapes and jars to try and fund the players. And you have an opportunity to make 500,000 euros from beating a team that's 396th on the UEFA ranking list. And you come out and you say, we have to focus on the domestic league because it's important and all that stuff. I mean, I don't even know really what to say. I was just so completely disgusted by what I saw. And it just highlights and unfortunately goes in favor of why a lot of people maybe dislike Aleksandar Stanovic and maybe don't want him to stay long term. Now, we haven't done a show about our clubs, pretty much since the last show we did, and it's been a while. So, in summary, as far as the season goes, if you were to ask me before the season started, how would I rate us now with a chance to get through the groups in Europe and an advantage in the league, which we haven't had in 7 years. We haven't reached the winter break being first in the table. Even when we won the double 4 years ago, it was basically until the last few games where we were still behind you guys. So in that sense, this year has been an overachievement because this team does not have the caliber needed to win the title. Not that it lacks talent, but it's a team that's not been well assembled. The types of players that are in this team are not well accustomed to play with one another, and you're in the Conference League, which if you look at it is not that much worse than the Europa League. Maybe the teams in the bottom pots are vastly inferior, but the teams in the top pots are not much worse than the Europa League. The financial gains that you get from winning in the Conference League are not much worse. So in that sense, it is a success because, we had a hellacious qualifying cycle to get there. And if you looked at our qualifying opponents and if you made a group of Sochi, Santa Clara, and Donetsk Streda, they'd probably be better than the opponents we have now. So in that sense, it is a success. And I can give Stanovic credit for being able to win in Cyprus after we've had some horrendous games there, whether it was Stopwell or Limassol and teams like that. The fact he was able to knock out a Russian team. The fact the team does have a tremendous amount of chemistry, does have a way of being able to close games out. This is a team that I believe does seem mentally strong and is performing to the best of its capacity, but it is a detriment to the fact that the team was selected in this way. And the fact that I don't consider getting out of this group a success. I consider it the bare minimum, and the fact that we're in a situation where we have to take the last game seriously just to get out of the group, I think is a failure. And the fact that he's throwing all of his eggs in the league basket is, I think, very risky because we know how the league is, even though this year the situation hasn't been nearly as chaotic in terms of the off-field stuff, and Zvezda for the first time has actually dropped points in games against smaller opponents. You still have a whole 5-6 months to go. You still have a team that desperately needs reinforcements. You still have the derby away, and now you're going to have fans there, unlike the last two games where there was no attendance. So there's a lot of factors that are very risky, and Stanovic is taking the big gamble. And I think that if he wins the league, then that gamble is going to be a great one. And if he doesn't, then he's going to undo almost all of the good work he had in his first term. And all that I do know is that this team desperately needs reinforcements during the winter, and I don't know where they're going to find them. But at least 3 or 4 positions need not only quantity, but also quality, because some of the guys really should not be wearing the Partizan shirt. And the fact that we didn't squash Flora with a reserve team is beyond embarrassing. And it's very symptomatic that the guy that had 2 massive successes in his time, and the fact that Stanovic was able to beat Anderlecht way back when, that he was able to knock out Sochi, that he, in his first term, had great success in the derbies, is now the same guy that has 2 of the biggest European embarrassments in the club's recent history. So it's 2 sides of the same coin, and it is embarrassing, and I'm still going to have to wait until the end of the season to give a proper, analysis on what he's done. There's been some good things, there's been some bad things, but on Thursday was beyond embarrassing.
And it was even worse because of our coefficients, because we're looking like we're going to pass Ukraine on the coefficient ranking, but looks like Belgium might catch us. So that shock loss is really screwing us right now for the coefficient. Although I think our odds of getting 2 teams in Champions League still look pretty great. And I think Partizan has a really good chance of getting out of the group, unless they, bottle it majorly in the final game. But
if they bottle it majorly, then they should just disband the club. I mean, we talked about it right after the game, talking with some guys. If you cannot beat Anatolis Famagusta at home, then what's the point? I mean, seriously. And also in regards to the Belgian point, they did have, I think, 3 or 4 teams in European competitions, so they were probably going to catch us anyway, just because the amount of teams they had. But it still seems like the 2 Champions League teams in 2 years seems a pretty realistic thing, as long as there's not a spectacular fail by either Zvezda or Partizan. I think it should be pretty safe.
Yeah, exactly. I think if just 2 more wins should probably secure it for us. So we'll have 2 clubs in the Champions League for next year. And then even if that happens, I feel like the tension and the stress and all the scandals and drama in the Serbian league will go down a bit more, because they'll both be going through the Champions League no matter what, right? So, I mean, obviously they'll still want the title, the cup, and all that, but that should lower the tension levels just a slight bit, and hopefully we can keep up the good results. And Zvezda as well in a difficult position in their group. Also, they did win last week against Ludogorets, 1-0, and they are in first place, but very tough games coming up. They have to travel to Braga, travel to Portugal, where they need a win or a draw to secure advancement to the next round. We just saw our national team go to Portugal and get a result, so hopefully Zvezda can do the same thing. But it's anything far from. It's going to be very tough going there because Braga is a solid team. They got a big result last game, and this group is wide open. Anybody except for Ludogorets can finish first or third. So it's a lot to play for, and I don't expect that, it's going to be tough for Ludogorets to take points off the Danes. So it's going to be up to Zvezda getting a result in Portugal. Luca, what are your thoughts on the clubs so far in Europe, and we can get that second Champions League spot?
Yeah, man. Obviously, I'm extremely hopeful that we can get that second Champions League spot, and Partizan dropping points, losing to Flora was extremely disappointing. And just to echo some of the stuff that Alexa said about Partizan's play, how it was sluggish, how players looked fatigued or not interested or whatever it may be. I think you could say the same thing about Zvezda in the last game. If it wasn't for that, moment of brilliance by Ivanic, and then that magnificent goal, I mean, that would have been a boring 0-0 draw. Let's be honest. So I am getting a little worried about Zvezda's play in Europe, even though they're first in the group. I believe we have 10 points, and then Braga has 9, and then the Danes have 8. So I just the last couple of games have been. It looks like they just lose concentration and have been playing pretty sluggish. So I'm hoping they can really turn it around. It's going to be an extremely tough game when we go to Portugal, and I'm actually expecting the Portuguese to return a favor to us because of what the national team just did and get a win over there and drop us out of the Europa League. I'm hoping it doesn't happen, obviously. Luckily, we can play for a draw, and there's a possibility we could get it. The trajectory that we're on right now, I'm just not optimistic that we will get it. Hopefully I'm wrong, of course. But yeah, I just feel like Stankovic needs to do something to wake up the team and shock them a little bit. I don't know if it's fatigue. I don't know what it is. They just seem a little bit off.
The form has slipped for sure for Zvezda, especially the last couple of weeks. Ever since the last international break, pretty much. Just seems like they're not playing as well. They're not dominating even in the league. They're not dominating as they used to. And I think they do definitely need another striker. I know they're getting that Norwegian guy from the Norwegian league. I forget his name, Oni or something like that. They signed, was leading or one of the league leaders in that league in goals. So he should hopefully help in January. But yeah, I just don't think Pavkov is enough. As good as he is, but I don't think he's enough. They need some more reinforcements there. Dioni hasn't really worked out. Richard Zivkovic isn't really a striker anyways. He's more a winger, but he's trying to play as a striker, and he hasn't done much in his minutes. So definitely need another attacking spark. They just need I think they just need to freshen the team up a bit, hopefully in the winter break, and get some. I know we've been saying this forever. Maybe get some new fullbacks, but maybe it just hasn't happened in the last 2-3 years. So I don't know if that'll happen now, but we'll see. Definitely on a downward spiral, and I have a very bad feeling about the game in Braga, but
Same.
We'll see what happens. Veli, what are your thoughts so far on this European campaign for our clubs?
At the risk of sounding really controversial, but as you guys know, I don't shy from doing that. The word arrogance comes to mind for both Zvezda and Partizan in the last month. And I know that sounds really, really brutal, but I can't think of any other way to describe it. The thing is, the Ludogorets game for Zvezda, they did fight to a certain degree, of which a quality that Stankovic has brought to the team, but they were extremely arrogant in the game before against Midtjylland at home, of which then we saw us lose, and we saw the sportsmanlike scenes that accompanied to the end of the game. I don't know how to say this any other way. I think Zvezda and Partizan, what they need now is a slap in the face. Do you know what I mean? Partizan's shock loss against Flora in Estonia and Zvezda, just falling over the line at the moment is actually simply not good enough. Now, I take it in a couple of other ways to make my point and to see the point of view. Number one, the intensity of our league is not that great. So it beggars belief to me why you would need to put a weakened side into a game against Flora, i.e. Partizan, and possibly look at rotation in cases like Zvezda, and to say, okay, we've got to go and play Flora. In Partizan's case, I beg your pardon, we've got to go play Flora in Tallinn, and we'll get a weakened side so we can come back and have a stronger side against who? Against Kolubara, against Novi Pazar, against who? Like, who are you going to have, strengthen the side for? So I actually thought, in both ways, the way Zvezda played against Michelin, they showed a little bit of improvement against Ludogorets, but smacks of arrogance to me. And Partizan's way of, not respecting the opposition and not respecting the trip and not respecting the European competition against Flora smacks both of arrogance. The other thing that we need to say to us is not like they're playing midweek games regularly. At the end of the day, the Serbian Cup is not known for its intensity. And then the other thing that we've got to realise as well is we're in an era of more substitutions than we were pre-COVID. And the Serbian League is going to go into hiatus within 3 to 4 weeks, correct me if I'm wrong, for our winter break. So I don't think it's too much of an expectation to ask everything out of the players, whether it is for Partizan or Crvena Zvezda, knowing that in 3 weeks' time we're all going to fuck off to Dubai or to southern Turkey to gain some sun and go back into our mid-season break to say, give it your all. Because I saw massive signs of optimism. Like, at this point in time, I still think Partizan are favourites to win the league, domestically. I think that, there is some good quality within Partizan's first 11, and then they've got, a couple players, as we all know, is in, Markovic, Jojic and things like that with, great European pedigree. I still have a right smile when I see Milan Smiljanic come on sometimes to do a 15, 20-minute shift for Partizan, and knowing because he played in Australia, at least there's experience there. And one thing that we missed it during our hiatus, because the last Zvezda Partizan derby, I actually thought that was the great advertisement for Serbian football. I actually thought it was a really good quality game, and one that we hadn't seen in a long, long time. So I thought that there was real hope and optimism for the domestic league. Looking after that home derby, but the last month has smacked a little bit of arrogance, smacked a little bit of disrespect, and at this point in time, I think Partizan are more of a favourite to have a more successful season than Zvezda, because let's face it, Zvezda's really fucked up with these signing of these foreigners and signing of these transfers. And it's not a one-off. D&E is nothing short of disgusting. You don't bring in Falcao for him to sit on the bench. Then heaven forbid that we go back, 12, 18, 24 months and we think of the names like Jande and Van Lapata and things like that. I get muka thinking about it. So I think Zvezda really needs to rethink. And at the end of the day, without being, extremely brutal, Rishard Živkovic hasn't worked either. So we've got to be really brutal about that and say, okay, these foreign transfers, are they doing anything that is enhancing their respective teams and the league? Because at the end of the day, if we've got the money to get these transfers in, the money's there somewhere. Right, that's the part that I find disappointing. The money is there somewhere. I think most of our listeners would know on the pod that the ex-international Alexander Prijovic has actually signed a 3-year contract to play in Australia. There was talk and rumour that Zvezda were trying to get him, and they couldn't reach an agreement. But all of a sudden, they can't reach an agreement with Alexander Prijovic, an ex-Serbian international who would know the landscape of how to play. but they've got money for a DNE who is absolutely horrible, and I can't say it any other way. So that's what leaves a bad taste in my mouth. That's what leaves the disappointment for me. Obviously, money's there. We're making horrible decisions, and I think Zvezda and Partizan's last month in European competition, and mind you, I think this Conference League is fantastic. It is so nice to get a third European competition because, as you guys know, that I remember the days when there was 3 European competitions, not 2. There was the old Cup Winners' Cup, and that always produced the best finals, the best semi-finals. So this Conference League is actually a welcome addition, and it couldn't have come at a better and more opportune time to help out Eastern European football, help out, Serbian clubs, what have you. And I think we've taken advantage of it, but we won't realise that advantage as much if Partizan don't progress out of the group stages of the Conference League and Zvezda don't progress out of the group stages of the Europa League. We need that more than life itself to complement everything what our national team has done. So, yeah, it's been really disappointing the last month.
Yeah, and if they can both get out of the group stage, it'll be a pretty perfect year for us, right? The national team qualifying and both the clubs qualifying for Europe for spring football in Europe. And you mentioned it, Zvezda's transfers have been god awful. Mitan Brkel, I really don't know how what he's doing or how he still has the job. Some of the worst transfers the last 2-3 years. There's really no comment for it. The fact that the core of the team is still the same for a large part in the last few years, despite all the players they brought in, says it all, because none of them have really worked out, or almost none of them have worked out. It just doesn't make any sense. They have to do something on that, and they're spending money. They're clearly spending money to get these players here.
So obviously the money's there. Obviously the money's there. They can't cry foul. They can't cry poor, right? Obviously the money's there somewhere.
And Falco was a record transfer, right? He was over $1 million, I think they paid for him.
Allegedly paid.
Allegedly. I don't think they've seen any money yet. His first club, I don't think there's. Was it from Lecce or Empoli? I can't remember. Lecce. Yeah, I don't think Lecce's seen a dollar yet, which is why they're going to UEFA over that. But at the same time, I mean, if you had to allegedly pay that much money for him, he has gotten plenty of chances, and I think he looked pretty good, this past weekend. But he just hasn't played that regularly, and when he has played, he hasn't looked that good, and something has looked good. So it's just not consistent. So we'll see. It's very tough. I think both clubs have a good chance of advancing, but let's do some predictions. So we have Zvezda against Braga and Partizan against Anastrosis Famagusta, however you say that.
Bless you. Bless you.
Let's hear some predictions. Alex, what are your predictions for these games next week?
Well, the Anastrosis game, I think there shouldn't be any debate. And it better not, because I'm going there. If I'm going to be in attendance, they better win. I mean, look, Anastrosis did pull off a result against Ghent, going from the halfway line, of all things. But I don't know. I mean, I understand that they it comes back to because it's a wider point that I needed to make. I understand that, it's natural for the tempo and the quality of Serbian teams to dip during the winter, because the way that there's just not enough money in our league, there's not enough money to go around for TV rights, and a lot of the times you depend on your transfers and what you get from UEFA to make sure that your budget is functional and optimal. And that's why a lot of times our teams, hit their peak in the summer, and it's natural that the form goes down. And I'm not surprised that we haven't been playing well, certainly in Europe, but that also comes down to having a squad of 14 or 15 usable players, and it's something that could have easily been avoided, and there was no reason at all why we should have been in this position. And regardless of how bad the complete lack of any moral high ground exists in the board in terms of how much money they've taken, there's still no excuse for looking how we look against Florida. There's still no excuse for some of the tactical decisions. So I think that the Anastrosis game, the first game I saw against them, they were hopeful on the rough domestic crowd, and that they were going to come out and they were going to pressure us. We took the game to them and were fairly comfortable in doing so. Granted, the situation we have now is drastically different to the one we had then because you don't have Bieber due to the unfortunate case of his anemia, and I hope that he gets well very soon. You don't have Sida Basuma, who's left. You don't have Lazar Markovic, who had a really gnarly injury. I mean, that was not pleasant to see, the way he fell on the grass. So you're kind of undermanned, and your team is already suffering with minor injuries, and you don't have much rotation. Ideally, I'd like to see some of the kids get a run out. I think Lazar Pavlovic started to play better in the games he's gotten a chance. I'd like to see Marko Milovanovic get a chance to start because Ricardo looks like he's going to collapse every game because he never gets subbed out and he never gets rotated. But you're also aware of the fact that our history dictates that this is the type of game that we're destined to lose. I mean, I'm getting such flashbacks to the Augsburg game where we even had the luxury to lose, and the only thing we didn't need to do was to lose with a certain result, and we lost by that result. So I have a very negative feeling. I think the only thing that's going to calm the fans down is a convincing win, and I don't think we can do that because I think Anatolis is starting to play better. They've got some of the guys back healthy, but I do expect us to win. I think that we're much better at playing at home than we were away, more so than any team that I can recall in recent history that's showed up to play for Partizan. So I expect us to win. I guess I'd say maybe 2-1. I think is a realistic scoreline. The Zvezda game is much more difficult. That's really the money game. Braga's a team that's very experienced. That's got a couple of players that even though they don't have big names, they can win a match with an individual moment or a piece of brilliance, a shot from distance or whatever. And the way that Zvezda won the game at home was bizarre. I mean, it was gutsy and resilient. But you had Milan Rodic scoring a header from the edge of the box, and you ended up getting a penalty. And really, Braga had the better chances. I don't remember the possession stats, but they were the team that had the better initiative or were more concise and more sharp. And we are talking about a team that's consistently played in the knockout stages of the Europa League for years now. And they were in the Champions League. So maybe they don't have the players that they maybe had 5-6 years ago, but they've still got guys that have played together for a long time. They know how to win. They're a tough side. History for Zvezda goes in their favor. We remember the game in 2005 when Zvezda was able to make a 1-1 there and advance in what was the UEFA Cup back then. The rematch was 2 years later, I think. They lost 2-0, so this is a rubber match. And I think that they're going to be somewhat influenced by the Michelin game. I think they know that Michelin's probably going to win that because Ludogorets, despite their innate attacking ability, they can't stop the four of us from scoring. So I think that they're going to be aware that if they want to get something, they have to win the Braga game, which might be the wrong move for them. But I also think that the Ludogorets game showed that they have the capacity, despite missing on their transfers and despite changing of the formation, because they played a 3 at the back against the Ludogorets. They have the capacity to soak up pressure, and they have the experience. They played together for a while. This is their 5th season in a row in Europe. They're going up against a team that's not obscenely better than them, and I think that because of that, I'm expecting a draw. I don't think that if the other players going forward were more fit, and if some of the guys in that team that are crucial, like Seiko Sanogo or some of the fullbacks, for example, were completely fit, I would say that they would have a better chance of winning. But if you don't have Sanogo and you don't have Rodic, those are two massive losses because you don't really have adequate replacements for them. But with that being said, I mean, the way Ivanic has been playing and the way Kata has been playing, just the two of them alone have shown that they're match winners. And again, you have a guy like Milan Papko up front who keeps turning up with big goals when they need him. I'm pretty confident they're going to get a draw. How good is that going to be for them going through in the Europa League, whether it's going to be for the round of 16 or the round of 32, I don't know. I'm expecting Michelin to beat Ludogorets pretty convincingly. But I think the Zvezda has shown that they have experience and the resources needed to get a draw, and they have enough attacking talent to where they can win a match even if they're not playing well. And Braga is not the type of team like Benfica or Porto where they're going to really pin you back and pressure you, whether it's because of their lack of talent or because they're not a team that plays that way. So I'm going to say 1-1. I think that's a reasonable scoreline.
Okay, and Luca, what are your predictions?
Before I get into my predictions, I do just want to mention, despite all the pessimism on this podcast, dude, it is, myself included, of course, it is beautiful that, we're talking about Zvezda and Partizan both in prime position to go through, to play in the European football in the spring. So, despite all the pessimism and that maybe our teams haven't been performing in the last month or so, it's still a beautiful time to be a supporter of either club and, of course, the national team and everything. It's just a good time for Serbian football in general. So I just want to put that out when you take a macro look at everything. For prediction wise, I think Partizan will actually do it pretty easily. I think they're gonna get the boys in the black and white are gonna get a 2-0 win. For Zvezda, I already said I expect them. I expect them to really get their asses handed to them, but I'm gonna go with a 2-1 loss. But I'm gonna also predict that in the other game, Midtjylland will tie 1-1 with Ludogorets and therefore will go through. Hopefully that's what happens. At best case scenario, I think Zvezda can inch out a draw. The way the kind of form we're in right now, I just don't see us going into Portugal and getting a win.
Yeah, and Veli, what are your predictions?
Look, brother, I absolutely agree with you, as I do with you, Alex, and all that type of stuff. But we're in the situation now whereby we need to raise the bar, right? So our expectations, we need to challenge ourselves as Serbian football as a whole to raise our bar. And then put it this way, Partizan should be Arthenosis and they should go through, and we can all call Flora Tallinn a hiccup. Zvezda, on the other hand, against Braga, that's going to be a very, very different mission. Braga had some very, very high-quality moments when they played against the Zvezda in Belgrade. They're a good team. They're a good side. They're managed very well by wily old manager Carlos Caval, who's very, very well respected in Portugal and abroad. So this is going to be a tough call for Zvezda, a really, really tough call. Zvezda's weakness at the moment is their lack of depth. So their first 11 is good, but who they take people off the bench and things like that, if things need to be changed, because we're in an era now where COVID plays a part. And, like Alexander Kate has never been the same when never been the same when he got COVID, and he got better after that, or supposedly got better. So we're in that era now where people are taking longer and longer to get back to full fitness.
Especially when only 3 players on the team are actually vaccinated or whatever.
Absolutely, but as I keep going to that whole subject, it's each to their own, right? So you take your consequences for, and you take your consequences against. So listen, I want Zvezda to win more than life itself, right? We need to build onto this momentum. I just think that we now left it to the hardest possible scenario, and I think the worst thing that we can do is play for a draw. I'd rather Zvezda play for a win and end up drawing rather than playing for a draw and end up losing and not going anywhere. So I believe that's going to be our greatest challenge, and then hopefully. What we want to do is play European football next year, and so if that doesn't motivate either of those teams more than anything, then they don't deserve to be there.
Right.
But we need to get on to that momentum of which has been slowly brewing. Is slowly brewing through Serbian football. We need to get onto that. So we need to raise the bar. We're not being pessimistic, but we're just calling the last month for what it was in club football land, right? Rather than the national team. It was a bit arrogant, but can we do it? Of course we can. Absolutely we can. But for Zvezda, we would need to play close to out of our skin, right? I think Partizan is more in a box seat to progress in their group, but Zvezda would need to play out of their skin. And we haven't done that in the last 3 games. We were really outplayed against Midtjylland in Denmark. We were outplayed in areas in Belgrade. Let's forget those 2. Ludogorets, we showed a sign of improvement. It was that real that they had more fight in them. That's more than anything, rather than top quality play. Now the thing is when we go into this European the winter break for the Serbian league, there's all sorts of reports. There's reports that a Saudi Arabian club and a club from Qatar, I'll stand corrected, are now after Ben. So if that happens, we've got to find reinforcements for that position there as well. So we're going to go through a tricky period.
Yeah, for sure, and you guys have all mentioned a lack of depth. We have seen that in this group stage. We saw it with Partizan against Genk when Zvezda was out. You had to sub on 47-year-old Lois Milanic, who let's face it, he shouldn't really be getting minutes in such an important game, but there wasn't really much options with the Partizan's lack of depth. And Zvezda too, in attack, it's basically Popkov, although youngster Lazetic has looked pretty promising the last couple of games, but he's still just a teenager. He needs time, but we'll see. And as far as my score predictions, I think Partizan will get the job done for 2-0, and then Zvezda. It's going to be a lot tougher, as you guys have mentioned. I still think that Stankovic can get the team up for this game. He's going to motivate them well for this one, and they all know what this game means. So I think they will get a 1-1, which will be enough to get through. But it's not going to be easy for either team, and they'll both have to improve their form if we want to improve. We want to have a chance of making it, and as well as doing well in the knockouts. Now, let's switch gears a bit, back to some national team talk. I know, we just qualified for the World Cup, but there's actually a draw coming up next week for the Euro playoffs. I know the Euro playoffs is the last thing we want to talk about after what happened. We're Nations League, the Nations League for the Euros. The playoffs is still on my mind from last year when Scotland beat us on penalties. Just don't want to, still scarred from that moment. But yeah, the groups are being drawn next week for the Nations League playoffs. We're in League C currently, or no, we're in League B currently. We're gonna get a good group regardless. It's just last time we saw, when we bottled it in the actual qualifying for the Euros, the playoffs is what the Nations League, winning our group in our Nations League is actually what kept us alive. I know we had that really easy group with our little brother Montenegro and Lithuania and Romania as well, our good neighbors. So hopefully we can get another easy group here and be have a backup plan in case we have our usual Euro qualifying implosion, which has been quite the tradition for most of our lives, unfortunately. Alex, so what are your thoughts on the Nations League? Do you care at all, or is this just going to distract us from the World Cup next year?
No, I definitely care. I think that the fact that it was able to give us an opportunity to qualify for last year means that you cannot underestimate it under any circumstances. I certainly am very interested to see how things are going to work. Important things are some necessary information. Just very quickly to name the teams that are along with us in League B, which I think is important. You have the relegated teams from League A, which were Ukraine, Sweden, Bosnia, and Iceland. And along as you have Finland, Norway, Scotland, Russia, Israel, Romania, Ireland, Slovenia, Montenegro, Albania, and Armenia, which, if you read those names, apart from maybe Ukraine and Sweden, there's really not a team that I would say that is better than that. Even Russia is a tough matchup for us. But if you saw how they played against Croatia, if we were a matchup against Russia right now, we'd beat them. I'm sure of it.
Or if we saw they play against us last time in the Nations
League. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
5-0.
Sweden is a tough team in terms of its defensive ability and in terms of their cohesion, but I think that the fact that they brought Ibrahimovic back might be a problem for them. Now, whether he stays for the Nations League or not is a different thing. But I still believe that talent-wise are just much better, and also tactically much more advanced than they are. And the other teams were just more talented then, and I think the consistency we've shown in these qualifiers dictates that our ability to beat the teams that were better than is great, which is a very good trait of this generation, because if you look at it, we really haven't had a hiccup against the small teams since we drew with Armenia, which was almost 8 years ago. All the other small teams that we played against, whether it was Georgia, whether it was Moldova, Lithuania, Luxembourg, we've beaten all those teams. I think that's something that the Nations League is good for. The other important information is that the games are actually going to be played very close together. You have 6 match days. 4 of them are going to take place in June, obviously because of the fact that the World Cup's going to take place in November. You have the first two match days between June 2nd and June 8th, and the next two match days between June 8th and June 14th. So you actually have 4 games to play with, which is very, very weird. And I'm interested to see how that works. If anybody knows of our historic achievements in terms of how we play in certain months, usually when we're playing in March or when we're playing in maybe even September when the season's just underway or when the season's in full swing, our results are pretty good. But when we're playing in June, when the season's at its end, our results are notoriously bad. So I think that's a factor that you actually have to take in because all these guys are going to be at the end of the season. And it is going to be interesting to see how teams are going to prepare for Qatar when it's going to be in the middle of the season, how the camps are going to work, but obviously that's way down the line. I'm interested to see how Pix approaches it. I think if you were to gauge from the previous friendlies that he's had, he's shown that he is willing to adjust the team and certainly rotate it and give guys opportunities, whether it's milinkovic-savic or Svila in the goalkeeping departments or Luka Jovic or other guys around the team. But he stays with his style of football, which is exactly the way it should be. He doesn't change the system of play. He doesn't do anything too radical. He just looks for guys that can be different types of options in a fairly similar system that he's trying to implement, and he's just trying to strengthen what we're already doing. And I think that he's somebody who can manage the Nations League really well, because if you remember the last time under Krstajic, we came out with strong teams. We really didn't rotate, really didn't try out new formations, but it wasn't that we were keeping the same formation to strengthen how we play. It was because he didn't know what else to do. I think Pixie used his time to really maybe even experiment, maybe try something new. Certainly he's got enough options where we've got probably a roster of 20 to 25 usable guys where he can change and rotate players in between. And I really expect us to go out and probably be in contention to win the group. I don't know how the ranking system works in terms of where we're positioned, but I'm assuming since we just narrowly escaped relegation, we can probably expect to get Ukraine or Sweden or one of the teams that got relegated from Ligue A. So, but with that being said, this team has shown a willingness to win every game. They take every game very seriously. You can tell from the Qatar game just before the Portugal game that they took that one very seriously. So I'm interested to see what happens. I'm hopeful that this FSS uses reasonable prices for those games, because I think it would be good to have 4 games in 2 weeks. It would be great to get the fans to come back and watch. But I'm equally interested in the March period when the playoff games are going to take place. How are we going to pick our opposition, and if we're going to have any friends at that point, because we don't really have any sort of obligation then. So it's an interesting period, but I think Pick's shown that the handling of the friendlies has been done well. He's giving you guys opportunities, and I'm pretty sure if other new guys start playing well in the following 6 to 8 months around Europe and the world, he's not going to be scared to give them a chance. So I think that he's shown that he can manage it well, and I think that the talent we have dictates the fact that we can win the Nations League, which can be very useful because Wales and Austria made the playoffs for this World Cup based on their Nations League performance. So it's also something that can be very useful, and I think he's aware of that. So I'm actually excited for it.
And I think it's a great. I think it's a good place to test some players as well. I think our squad is fairly set, I would say, but there are still some positions that we could use some reinforcements in. I mean, I'm sure he might give a chance to the duo from Bochum, who's playing very well currently, Miloš Pantovic and Erhan Mašović. Those guys are playing regularly for their club, and they're doing pretty decent in the Bundesliga, so I think he's going to give them a chance. Maybe we'll see more of milinkovic-savic in goal to see who's going to get that spot for the World Cup. So I think it will be a good opportunity for him to see a bit more players, and I'm sure he's going to rotate a lot and experiment a lot, especially with those June games. Our older players, I'm sure Tadic isn't going to play all those games. I'm sure Mitrovic is going to get plenty of rest. We'll see some Jovic and Vlahovic in there for most of those minutes. So I think in that sense it's going to be good because we'll have some time to test some players. Luca, what are your thoughts on the upcoming Nations League?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with everything Alexa just said. But I will add, of all the names that he just read that are going to be in B, League B, whatever it's called. I'm not. I don't care who's in our group. As Veli talked about, it's about leveling up now, and I agree with that. And I think that means that you expect to be first in whoever it is in this Nations League group that we get. So I'm be expecting that, and if the Qatar friendly is any indication, I don't think that Pixie will be stepping off the gas pedal anytime soon, especially not for the Nations League, and especially not when you can use the Nations League as a total like launch pad for just going into Qatar and the World Cup on an extreme high. So I'm expect anything less than first place in the group, no matter who we get in the group, will be a disappointment in my eyes, and I think also in Pixie's eyes, especially since he was able to just take us directly to the World Cup and by beating Portugal at in Lisbon. So that's what I'm expecting, and I also think it is a good time to obviously try out new players. I think other nations will be doing that as well, so we can so it'll be pretty even in that department. So yeah, man, I guess that's where I'd be. It's time to level up and expect to be first.
Yeah, and I think we all know Pixie's mentality by now. He's going to want to win. He's going to want to be finished. He's going to want to finish first. I don't think he's going to treat this like friendlies at all because he knows the importance of qualifying for the Euros. And I think also another thing that we can use these games for is to cap tie some players that are potentially playing for other countries currently, like Lazarus Samardzic from Udinese, or Darian Males, who's doing very well with FC Basel currently. So guys like that who are still kind of on it's unsure who they'll play for. This could be another opportunity to get some of those players into our team and give them some minutes to cap time for the future, especially since we're going to the World Cup. We have some leverage in that sense currently, and of course we have a legend as a manager, which won't hurt either when you're talking to these players and trying to in a way get them to play for us and not for Switzerland or Germany or whatever other country they can play for. Valley.
Very quickly, Milos, before Valley comes in, sorry to interrupt. The kid from Bayern, I forget his name. Did we lock him up, or is he still? I forget his name.
Montigo, yeah, he plays for he's playing for the under-19, so I don't think.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, who knows? Germany can always sneak in, but for now, he's playing for us. Yeah.
Milos, can I throw something out there, brother? Right?
Yeah, brother.
This is what I'd love to see more than anything. We're in a weird phase of World Cup history where it's been played in December. Many of the leagues are going to finish. Some of them, I've heard that the English Premier League is going to finish 8 days before the opening match at the World Cup. So there's really only the June fixtures and the March fixtures that are taking place before the World Cup starts. That's not a lot of time. You know what I would love to see more than life itself? The June fixtures are the Nations League, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but that the Nations League and the Europa Conference League are two of the best ideas UEFA have come up with in the last 50 years, because they've been riddled with scandal just like FIFA and everything else, and I can't believe I'm actually saying that. But yeah, because at the end of the day, credit is due. I think the Nations League is fantastic. The more meaningful internationals that we have, the better it is. I would love to see, whether this is going to happen is far-flung, that there's a March international window. I would love to see Serbia play 2 friendly games in that region of the Middle East, whether it be Abu Dhabi, whether it be Muscat in Oman, whether it be Manama in Bahrain, whether it be in Doha itself, whether it be in Sharjah, Dubai, whatever it is, and for the players to go on a camp in that area to get used to the heat, to get used to the conditions, to get used to the infrastructure, to get used to the travel, the transport and everything. Granted, I believe in March the heat would starting to get worse because you'd be coming off the Northern Hemisphere winter. But I would love to see 2 friendly matches. I believe, Alexa, you're closer to the Serbian media than I am. The first mention was possibly Milovan Rajovac, the ex-Zvezda goalkeeper, who's now coaching Ghana, for that to be one of Serbia's opposition in those March friendlies. But I would love to be like a study tour, if you will, a preparation tour that they went to the Middle East to get ready for the World Cup, because it's literally this: March international window, the June-July international window, correct me, but we both know it's there, and then it's basically the World Cup.
You do have September left, but that's also only 2 games, so it's not really a lot of time.
Exactly right. But the thing is, though, is the crucial period is we don't have that three and a half week period before every other World Cup in the past, of whereby you had time and preparation in every national team squad to get your camp together and get things organised. So
yeah, I think that's a good idea, but if we remember, this summer when we went to Asia, how many players pulled out, whether it be from, minor knocks or their club just not wanting to go.
This is where we need to change, right? This is where we need to change. This is where we need to get onto that momentum. Because at the end of the day, European players going to Middle East, that's a 4-hour trip. Trust me, I've done that leg many a time. It's 4 to 5 hours. If they were going to the other end of the world, playing games in Panama or Costa Rica, then they would see Lorca there, but they'd also have a long trip home. It can be done. It is more than feasible. So I don't know. I would love to see that to give us the best possible chance of succeeding in that World Cup. Our ambition must be at the World Cup is to get out of the group stage and then win a match. And after that, schwabble that. Right? Throw your hands up in the air and enjoy yourself. But I reckon that, and we don't know the draw. We don't know the groups. We don't know our opponents.
It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter, right? If you're playing your game, it shouldn't matter.
Exactly right. So we are in that area, and I was crapping on, which I'm known for in the last pod. The wave is coming. We're not on it yet, but the wave is coming, and we need to get on board. As fans, as administrators, as players, as managers, that's what we need to do. And we need to make smart, wise, calculated decisions to make sure that we succeed in any way we possibly can.
Agreed.
Sure.
The only thing that sucks is that the March friendlies are just before the World Cup draw, because usually the draw would be right now in November, and then you can use the March friendlies to really camp the competition.
The thing is that type of trip that I proposed would be more about infrastructure, transport conditions, weather, acclimatization.
No, definitely. I mean, it's not an easy trip to make. I'm pretty sure you're not the only one that's come up with that idea. I'm sure that some of the teams that are coming from maybe the European continent, maybe from the colder parts are going to show up.
If my shitty research has done its job, and if all the other reports are true and factual and correct, yes, the stadiums, most of them are within 40 to 45 minutes from each other, but accommodation is going to be more than a challenge. There's already reports that there's no rooms left. There's also reports I've heard on another podcast that's inferior to ours, but that some of the Airbnbs in Doha are going at around £15,000 a month. So it is going to be very, very difficult already. And I know that all the national teams will not have problems, with accommodation, this and everything else. But I feel sorry for the poor fans that are going to go there. But these are the type of logistical situations and challenges that we just need to be prepared for. And I think we need to prepare as quickly and as extensively as we possibly can.
Yeah, and I think one of our listeners from the UK just shelled out, I think, around £8,000 for his accommodations for Qatar, if I remember what he wrote to me.
That's not even counting the price for the tickets, right?
Yeah, he has no tickets yet, just the accommodations that he set up for himself.
That's how much Maluka lost now getting onto this podcast now from cryptocurrency.
Oh man, I haven't seen the charts, dude.
Yeah, exactly right. We're really, really killing the man. You know what I mean?
He's making massive gains. He can afford it.
Yeah, dude.
Absolutely.
Maybe I won't be going to Qatar after all, dude.
Australia have to be there. Australia must say, brother. Australia must say, but it's your shout anyway. All right, so as long as you know that.
Yeah, and I think when we look at the playoffs that we won't be in, thankfully, we do have a chance to move up in pots. We're currently going to be, just by the estimates, we're going to be in pot 3 for the draw of the groups for the World Cup, and if some results go our way in these playoffs and these final qualifying games for other federations and for Europe, we have a good chance of getting into pot 2 and having a potentially easier group. Although pot 3 and pot 2, they're both going to be filled with strong teams.
I mean, that's really pick your poison. I mean, I don't really see much of a difference there. The thing that I would say is that because you get 2 European teams max, I'm pretty sure the pot 1 team is going to be either Qatar, Brazil, or Argentina, because most of the simulations people have done, like 70% of them show that. So I mean, you can kind of plan a little bit because of that restriction, but I wouldn't like to be any of the pot 1 teams looking at pot 2 or pot 3 because it's dead even in my eyes.
No, definitely. But I think in pot 3, there's going to be a lot more non-European teams. So, that might not do us well because, lost to Ghana and those things. But, I do like our odds against more so like a team like Mexico than, one of the stronger European sides. But we'll see. I mean, yeah, you're right. Pot 2, pot 3, it's all going to be quality teams. Even pot 4 is going to be teams that can beat us, who we should be, but can beat us, and wouldn't be surprised they beat us. So there is plenty to look forward to, even though we won't be playing in the playoff, thank God. And hopefully, we see both Italy and Portugal not make it. That would be amazing, because then we would definitely be in pot 2, and we'll see maybe our Macedonian friends go to the World Cup.
Hey,
absolutely, they had a great qualifying cycle. They could beat Germany. The way Italy's played, and the fact that they had their hiccups against Switzerland, why not? We're rooting for them. All for Yugoslav representation.
I just want to see us in a group with the United States. That would be a dream come true for me, man. It's just
United States and
there's a massive possibility. There's a massive possibility that it could either be the US or Canada or even Australia.
Yeah, for sure. I want the Dutch though. I think we're better than them, and I think we owe them. We owe them so much.
Times 3, we owe them big time.
Yeah, and I think, I think our Pixie would be up for that so much, and he would get the players up for that so much. I really think it's kind of destiny. I think it's destiny to get them.
There must be like a chance that we can get Argentina and the Netherlands in the group, and we can erase all our passes.
Bring them on, man. Bring them on.
Dream come true.
I'm just saying, this whole qualifying with Pixie has been kind of destiny, right? His first goal for a national team against Portugal. The last time we beat Portugal was when he scored that goal, and then we, win Portugal and go to the World Cup. His last game at the World Cup, that game against the Netherlands in 1998, and that horrible last-minute loss after that goal by was it Davids? That idiot.
Pedro Davids.
Yeah. So I think
Not to mention the 6-1, but
I don't want to talk about that. Yeah, but his last
that never happened.
That was 1998. Were you guys like 5 when you were watching that, or what?
I was in my dad's balls.
I remember it well, actually.
Good
but
God,
yeah, I just feel like it's destiny that we get them, and I think we are better than them, and I can't wait.
Dude, I really want England for some reason, man. I just want to knock the arrogance out of them with a decisive win, dude. That would be the cherry on the cake, dude. Then they could lose the rest of the games. I really wouldn't care.
Yeah, or knowing us, we beat England and then lose to Costa Rica.
Right.
Exactly. And you know what? Let's cap the show off then with some other talk. Our boy Dusan Vlahovic today for another goal. He's got 12 goals in 15 league games currently in the Serie A, top scorer in the league, while playing for Fiorentina, a team that does not provide him with great service or doesn't have great midfielders or great wingers. So let's give him a big shout out. He's continuing to kill it. Any mentions you want to make, Luca? Players are doing well currently.
No, I actually watched the Vlahovic game today. And yeah, man, he was great. I do want to give a shout out to Milos Pantovic from Bochum. We kind of briefly touched on him, but he had 2 amazing goals, long range, basically from half field, very recently, and those were beauties. Great vision on those. It seems like all of our players are playing pretty damn well, including Tadic, obviously at Ajax. We know that. So I just gotta tell him to keep it up, man. It's beautiful to see.
Yeah, man, that was Milos Pantovic. 2 goals in the Bundesliga this season. Both of them one was beyond the half line, I think, and the other one was just in the half line.
Right.
Yeah, he's seems like he's coming on nicely for them. Still a young player. Might be a future for him with the national team for sure. Alex, any mentions you want to make before we close the show?
I was definitely going to mention Pantovic, not to mention that both of his goals came with different feet. The first one was with his left, the other one was his right. And when you look at the fact that our center back position might be the only one that hasn't been fully decided, we can use all the help we can get. I also watched Vlahovic, and 29 goals in 39 games, and the ease of which he makes it look. I mean, he's just effortlessly gliding past people, and much better than only Holland in my book, anyone else's book. So I don't really know who I would shout out. All the guys are playing well, and they're keeping up with good form. But I guess if I was to make a special shout out, it would go to Filip Kostic for an amazing assist.
Oh yeah, man.
For the game winner for Frankfurt.
Absolutely.
Crossed it from the halfway line, and it was a Beckham-like cross that went right onto the head. I don't think it was Andre Silva. I forget who it was, but his crossing ability. The only thing that he really misses is the flair in his crosses, and that was as flary a cross as you can get. If he can add that into his game, he might be like legitimately the best wingback in the world, because his pace, his strength, his understanding of the game is already elite. And if he can just add a technical aspect to it, and if he can work on his weaker foot, which he also displayed very well in that game, because I watched him a little bit, he would be such a difference maker. So shout out to Filip Kostic, and shout out to all the guys, man. They're all playing well. But very quickly, before I give Ellie a nod, there are two things that I'd like to mention. First off, on a less lighter tone, shout out to Stefan Jelowitz, the basketball player who unfortunately suffered a brain hemorrhage. A couple weeks ago, he was a key member of our team during the qualifying cycle for the World Cup 2 years ago. A very good player, and we wish him all the best. It's a terrible thing that happened, and a lot of respect to the Greeks for paying all of his medical bills and really being there to support him. And on a lighter note, a shout out to the informative agencies of Serbia. I don't know if you guys saw the story. It was revolving Milan Smiljanic, of all people. Funny enough, they only mentioned him. Vladimir Vuletic, who was the former legal counsel for Partizan, who left the club, gave an interview today, and he talked about how there was a directive, basically an order from the informative agencies that Milan Smiljanic has to sign for Partizan, because his money and the paycheck he's going to get is going to go to his best man or whatever, who's a highly positioned politician in the Serbian Progressive Party. So
that's fantastic.
The chaos in Serbian football just carries on, and not to mention the fact that he also paid for the hotel trip that we had when we went to play against Santa Clara. So shout out to Milan Smiljanic for being a wall of bond, top-notch stuff. Daniel Craig, you have a replacement. You need to find one.
Nothing.
That's like me losing 20 kilos, going to play football again, signing for my local club, and my money going to the Australian Greens Party. It ain't going to fucking happen.
You seem like a Green Party type of guy.
I know. It's not going to fucking happen. Jesus Christ.
Hey, let's also.
Hey, I wish you were here, because there's going to be a protest this weekend. It is going to be oriented by the Green Party, but it's going to be much more radical and much cooler than what you guys have. I think you can get the best of both worlds here. But, yeah.
Hey guys, let's also not forget to give a shout out to our boy, the new mayor of Miami, Nikola Jokic, dude.
Absolutely. Him and his bros, man.
Oh man.
Well, he's up on the MVP.
Oh, that was amazing. And Valley, of course, we can't end the show without your final shout outs and thoughts. Go ahead, my man.
Absolutely. So I'd love to get a massive shout out to the Avala Football Club, which was formed in 1968 in Sydney, Australia. It is now known as the Bonnyrigg White Eagles. Have a massive history within Australian Serbian football, and one of the big things that they have is their youth development and talent progression. I have a massive shout out to two very young lads, Danilo Mrištrak and Aleksandar Đuricic, who have been selected in the youth team for Sydney FC, which is the team in the A-League, so the professional divisions within here in Australia. As many of our listeners would know, Milos Ninkovic is playing his 5th or 6th season now, ex-Serbian international, playing here in Australia. So a massive shout out to Danilo and Aleksandar. I hope your career progression just goes leaps and bounds, and to Avala, to Bonnyrigg White Eagles. Again, well done, fellas, for your massive talent and youth development program to keep producing these young kids, and let's hope that they get a very, very fulfilling career. And my last shout out, guys, I'll be really, really transparent here, and to all of our listeners, to my little man Atanasie, who unfortunately broke his arm last night and spent the night in hospital and things like that. You were very, very, very brave. Your parents are really, really proud of you. Guys, he loves playing football, loves playing basketball. He has the Puma Serbia strip, of which he hardly ever takes off. And he gets up to watch all the games and goes to school, almost half asleep, which he takes after his old man. Not a problem at all, because of the time difference. And so a massive shout out to him. You're a very, very brave young man, and he's a massive Cristiano Ronaldo fan. And then when Serbia played Portugal 2 weeks ago, and obviously we got up and all that type of stuff, and I asked him, said, Atanasi, well, what about Cristiano Ronaldo? There was a big pause, and he just went, bugger him. So it's nothing better than that. So a massive shout out to you, a massive shout out to Danilo Alexander, and as I say to everybody, every single time, Živi zdravi bili.
That's right. Get well soon, our little man, our number one fan, of course. And everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.